Welcome, everyone. This is the last day of EAAMO'. We're very excited to have you here. We have two very exciting keynotes and a series of presented talks as well. So it's my pleasure to welcome Trooper Sanders for today's first keynote. Trooper is a Detroit native and has more than 20 years of experience working at the crossroads of business, government, and the nonprofit sector. He's currently serving as the Chief Executive Officer at Benefits Data Trust, which is a national nonprofit helping people live healthier and more independent lives by creating smarter ways to access essential benefits and services. Before that, Trooper was a social impact and policy advisor to financial technology startups, business leaders, and philanthropic initiatives. He has held numerous White House policy staff positions during the two separate administrations. And he most recently served as a Rockefeller Foundation Fellow. Today, Trooper is going to talk about fusing code and prose, blending and balancing the quantitative and qualitative in advancing equity. Thank you, Trooper. You can take it from here.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being here on a Saturday morning at the end of, no doubt, an interesting and stimulating week, but a week of staring at sessions can be tiring. So I really appreciate everyone being here. Well, so first, since I know that this conference has a number of amazing scholars, I should begin by just citing some of my sources, but really more inspirations. As I've been engaging in this work, actually predating my time at BDT, and so many folks who've participated in conferences like this and who have presented papers and thinking and writings have really gone into shaping a lot of my thinking. So of course, we all know the great Regia Babe, who's amazing, and Joy Buolamwini, who's now, as some of you all may know, defended her dissertation this week successfully. Timnit Gebru, of course, and Karen Levy, and Safia Umoja Noble, Karen O'Neill, Sandra Wachter, and so many others. I do, as you can tell, I am a bit of a reader, and I keep up with a lot of, and the papers that have come out this week. I am a religious follower. I probably read quite a bit of the abstracts, even if I don't have time to dive into all of the papers. So just really appreciate everybody's ideas and creativity that has really helped ignite not only an academic field around equity and the advances and tools and techniques that we're talking about, but really a movement that is really calling into question a number of the things of how we shape our society, how we treat people, and how we leverage a number of the advances and innovations. For those who are not from the United States, I will apologize in advance that the nature of my work is focused in the United States, but of course these issues have global implications, and if there are any questions about that, would love to talk about that during the discussion. So as was mentioned, I've actually been CEO of Benefits Data Trust. My second birthday was last week, and it is an extraordinary team of people based in Philadelphia, but serving families all across the United States. And the topic of my talk, fusing code and prose, Benefits Data Trust is truly a community that does that, where we have engineers sitting next to policy people, sitting next to client services people who spend all day helping people get screened for and apply for benefits, and all other disciplines that you can possibly imagine. And fusing that together to create the kind of impact that we want is one of the most important things that I do, other than raising money, which is what nonprofit CEOs do. But one of the most important things that I do is being on a constant leadership and learning journey of how to bring the different disciplines together to create the whole and to have the impact that we want. So Benefits Data Trust was really created for a very practical reason, in that in the United States, we have had more than 50, 60 years of a modern social safety net. We can debate the amount of that, but generally speaking, from a policy point of view, we started to create the social safety net after the Depression and the Second World War. And while those programs have been created in law and tax dollars go towards them, the administration of those programs have become in many ways such a thicket and such a maze that many people left to their own devices are not able to tap these benefits to meet some really urgent daily needs, such as buying food and heating their home, getting health insurance to be able to stay healthy and deal with health conditions. And this adds up to real money. We estimate that there is about $60 billion worth of benefits across healthcare and education and food assistance and other programs that are passed by Congress. Our tax dollars, American tax dollars are going towards them, but they're simply left on the table every year because people are not able to tap them. For those of you who are American, who might have had to navigate the benefit system yourself, be it going through the financial aid process for school or potentially other benefits, or helping a family member or other loved one navigate these systems, you know that it can really be just hair pulling, frustrating to navigate them. And so, here's the real nub of the matter. I'm in a fortunate position to be able to lead Benefits Data Trust and to be able to enjoy a certain level of economic comfort. And the truth is that in the United States, if you are comfortably middle class, never mind being wealthy, you are able to access things that advance your life and that help you in ways that are far easier than people who are facing tougher economic circumstances. If I were able to multitask on this screen, I could pull up a screen right now and apply for a pretty sizable mortgage with the ease that someone who is trying to buy a better bag of groceries simply cannot. And so Benefits Data Trust is really there to really work on several levels. One is to help people directly who are trying to apply for different benefits. And as I said, we have this amazing team of benefits outreach specialists who come from all walks of life. Some of them have traveled through in your academic journey, others are artists, but they've all come together to provide this really high touch client service. We also, in addition, we work with states and cities who are charged with administering these programs to not only serve people that they are interested in serving better, but to also work with them on how to make the current system work a bit better. How can we streamline access to benefits given the way that the current system is set up? In some cases, that could mean providing waivers so that people don't have to go through a lot of the paperwork to keep their benefits. In other times, we have conversations around optimization and how can these systems tweak and turn how they do their work. And you'd be surprised that some of the most concrete and what may in the broad scheme of things seem to be fairly narrow changes can make a really big difference in the lives of millions of people. And so we work at that level as well. Now, as is in our title, data and related technology concerns are a fundamental part of how we do our work. There are tens and tens and tens of millions of households across the United States that are going without benefits. And frankly, we could not do our work and have our impact without leveraging the power of data and analytics and a lot of the tools and techniques and innovations that you work on. One of the core things is data matching. And so what we would typically do is working with a state, and let's say that they were interested in improving the uptake of SNAP, or what used to be called food stamps, that people can get to buy groceries, food. It would be quite difficult to go person by person or block by block. But what we do with data matching is that we would work with the state and say, let's look at your list of people who are receiving Medicaid, which is health insurance for low-income people. Let's then get your list of people who are on SNAP, and let's compare them. And then let's pull out the people who are receiving Medicaid, the healthcare assistance, but not receiving SNAP, because generally speaking, if you are eligible for one of the benefits, you're likely eligible for the other. And then that kicks off our outreach process. And classically and traditionally with benefits data trust, we would then reach out to people, often by good old-fashioned letters, which work quite well, but increasingly through text and other means, to let them know that they may be eligible for benefits and invite them to call our contact center, and then our amazing folks work with them. And then increasingly we are also doing other ways to help people that don't involve necessarily calling our contact center. But that data matching, which probably for many of you might seem pretty obvious and kind of a first level thing, it's been really fascinating that from an operational point of view, and this is where we get to the fusing the code and prose, how to take something like that and operationalize it can be quite complex, because often agencies might not have a history of talking to one another. There are all sorts of rules and regulations and data protection questions that you have to consider. And so we do a lot of work to engage states and others on moving that forward to energize the outreach process. Second part is around our analytics and optimization. And there are a vast ocean of questions that I have on my mind, but that, as you know, it all comes down to prioritizing so that the wheels don't come off the bus of our brilliant analytics team. But part of that is really trying to understand and gain deeper insight into who we are serving, how they want to be served. What's the impact of benefits on other domains? So, for example, one very significant effort that we have underway is really figuring out what is the impact of, say, access to SNAP, or for someone to buy a better bag of groceries, on broader healthcare utilization and healthcare spending, to be able to make the case that at scale, benefits access should be a mainstream part of how we advance healthcare and health equity in the United States. So it goes from issues like that are more sort of intellectual and policy, but then also on the operations side, we spend a lot of time trying to make sure that the time and people and treasure that we put towards engaging our clients is used at peak proficiency and efficiency. The third part is really tapping a lot of the tools and services in the marketplace with our work. I am really proud that we're now entering the third year with a tool, Wyatt, that is a partnership with the College Board, and it uses natural language processing to provide support, a chatbot to help students in high school navigate the financial aid process as they are applying to school. And one of the really extraordinary drags on achieving equity in the United States is that we leave billions of dollars in federal financial aid on the table that affects a lot of low-income students generally, but especially students of color, that locks them out of, prevents them from going to school or going to schools where the program may be more fitting for their academic journey. And so being able to do this, we think is not only making a difference now, but to be perfectly honest with you, there are hundreds of thousands of students, or probably millions across the country, who frankly want to be you one day. And if we can help folks get financial aid to be able to get on their journey, that's going to be a really important impact that we can have on the country. So that's the standard vanilla benefits data trust. But then you add on 5-6 months into my tenure as CEO, we have the COVID pandemic. We have the racial reckoning that was ignited from the murder of George Floyd. And BDT really had to step up to the plate and meet the moment. One, the extraordinary demand for benefits that came from when the economy stopped and frankly, government offices shut down. We found ourselves in a both an energizing and a humbling position of being one of the few who were still standing and able to work virtually and get people the benefits they needed. We frankly had to depart from our data matching strategy and just create 1-800 numbers because the demand was so great. But one of the things that came out of that is, as wonderful as that is to be in a nonprofit to do that, and that's kind of the name of the game. To be honest with you, it was a sobering and uncomfortable moment for me, because we were not just, a nice nonprofit helping states and communities across the country do things in addition to what they do. We were core infrastructure. And frankly, it is not right that a nonprofit should be core infrastructure to administer government benefits. And so in the midst of responding to the pandemic, that also ignited and pushed a lot of our thinking around what more can benefits data trust do to be more relevant to the broader transformational and structural issues that intersect with equity, be it race, be it health, be it other factors. And that takes us to really, where we are now. And there are a few things. One is, yes, BDT is going to make sure that we serve as many people as possible every day and do it well. We've done more than $7.5 billion in benefits since we were founded in 2005. But we are also becoming part of the conversation and the support of how can state systems, how can government work at peak efficiency and effectiveness to provide the type of dignified service that people want just through government. And that means serving people with dignity. That means confronting a number of the inequitable challenges that are part of the history of benefits in the United States. That means serving people the way that they want to be served. So if someone was on here and they want to be able to apply for SNAP by clicking a screen and doing a bit of multitasking, they should be able to do that. And so we were on this journey with a number of states. And if I come back in 2024, I hope to bring the data and insights to say that this fundamental part of improving government and how people are served, we have the evidence, and now we can just scale the effort. The second part, when you think about benefits, and again, this $60 billion, is really seeing the benefits that are untapped, as well as the broader benefits system, as not just fulfilling immediate needs from people, but as seeing it as capital for equity, public capital for equity. And so we can talk about issues such as racial inequities in maternal health and the unnecessary number of Black and brown mothers who die each year due to lack of access to healthcare or poor access or poor healthcare when they receive it. And there are billions of dollars worth of healthcare funding and insurance available that's left on the table. So there's an added urgency to our work to make sure that everyone who can go to school has the federal financial aid that can help them do that, to make this community more diverse, to make sure that the economic trajectory and economic mobility is as equitable as possible. So where does that leave you? One of the work that you do, I think about a paper that was presented at a conference like this several years ago by Joy and Timnit, raising the concerns around facial recognition and the racial disparities in that. And no doubt they cranked on that paper as the brilliant scholars that they are, the way that many of you do as well in your research, and then you present it at a conference like this, and then what? And it truly has ignited something very special in terms of equity. And I see equity in 3 layers, and really see the value of this community and the work that comes out of it as being relevant in those layers. I see equity at the strategic level, and that really means, how do we as a society construct ourselves? What are the broad rules of the road? What are the broad priorities and assumptions that we put in it? On the qualitative side, on the prose side, that's everything from our Constitution and how we interpret it, and our laws to our values and all the social systems and assumptions and prejudices and biases that go into making up a culture and a community and a society. And so scholarship like Joy and Tim Neitz and your scholarship can really, if it's fused with the people who are having the conversations in the broader scope, can provide that rigor and precision and ideas and uncover a number of issues that then need to be integrated into how we think about strategic issues like surveillance, how we think about the role of race and skin color and perceptions and bias that's caked throughout our society. And then at the operational level for equity, that's how our different institutions work, how the gears grind, how people like me, CEOs who are not just in nonprofits, but are in businesses and government agencies and others, prioritize how the organizations work. And so the ideas and scholarship that you bring to the table can also both challenge us and challenge those who are responsible for running these institutions to look at things in a different way, to question their assumptions, to ask harder questions. But it can also help us lay out the rules of the road and say that, you know what, as a guiding principle, we are going to ask hard questions about bias in our use of algorithms and question our procurement and the services that we may bring in that are using these techniques. I won't sign a check until I see from those vendors, what are the weaknesses in your assumptions? Talk to me about the data. Talk to me about the bias that may be in there, so that we can, if we can either decide not to use those techniques, or if we do, make a priority about mitigating some of the risks. And then the third part is the tactical level of equity. And that's really where people feel this often in their lives. So in the benefit system, the tactical level of the inequity is when a mother has to bring her child to an inconvenient office and take the day off, because if she doesn't, she won't get the benefit that will help her buy groceries. It's the design of the websites that are not inviting, or that make it difficult for someone who are on the wrong side of the digital divide to navigate. And so a lot of the insights that this community can bring, and particularly pinpoint and ask the questions that advance equity and that reveal some of the issues, can play a really important role in addressing these matters and helping better decisions to be made and helping spending decisions. And so it's really exciting. You know, I know that probably many of you spend many nights hunched over a laptop somewhere and you know, presenting things, and you sort of wonder, like, okay, where does that go? And so as long as we can get to it, it really has an effect. But I think the last part I do want to say in terms of fusing the pros and code is that I think we all have to make sure that we are both being authentic to ourselves and the different guilds that we operate within, and that we're also building bridges to other guilds, to other specialties, and both putting ourselves in the uncomfortable position of visiting the other guilds and seeing how they do things and listening, and frankly, not knowing what on earth is going on. So then when we have guests in the guilds that we work in, we're a bit more empathetic on how to bring people in, how to explain things, how to provide, you know, here's some of the things you really need to know. All this other stuff, don't even worry about it. Because to have this, you know, this sort of collective interdisciplinary conversation, you know, we all both need to be our most rigorous selves, and to also bring some humility and kindness so that others can be a part of these conversations. And, you know, one challenging thing that I'd like to leave you with is that, you know, the work that you do is sexy. You're the cool kids of social change. You are you're the cool table in the lunchroom. And so what you bring to the table can catch notice. But I would say also keep in mind that there are many people who work in prose, who have been fighting these fights and asking these questions and pushing and struggling for years. And so as part of the relationship, it's really a question of how can you bring your muscle, your rigor, your analytics, and frankly, take advantage of the fact that everyone is interested in anything that mentions something about data or optimization. How can you be an ally and a partner and make sure that others are at the table, or at least don't feel that you may be gentrifying the space that they have built for so many years? Because it's really, it's an extraordinary, this part of doing social change takes quite a chorus. And then finally, as you can see, I have sort of book issues back here, and I was going through my books, and I found two. One is, of course, Safia Noble's great, amazing work, who's now a MacArthur Genius Fellow. But I also forgot that I had bought this book several years ago, and it is by, it is W.E.B. Du Bois, who was an early 20th century Black civil rights leader. And in 1900, preparing for a presentation to an event in Paris, he did a number of data visualizations on the state of African Americans across the country. And so it was fascinating that I stumbled across this, because it also made me remember that when we talk about things such as data, analytics, and optimization, it isn't new. It's just the tools that we have, and the space that it occupies is new. So we're just the latest part of the grand arc of history, and it's our great responsibility and great opportunity to do a lot of good. So thank you for having me. Thank you for getting up on a Saturday.
Speaks to a lot of our goals of, like, as you said, like bridging different guilds and how we can learn from the other disciplines in like solving issues that are really core to improving inequities that are happening in society. Thank you. That was really wonderful. I think we have a couple of minutes for questions, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. So I wanted to open up for everyone. If you have questions, please add them into the Q&A or the chat, and we can ask them now. And in the meantime, I'll ask a question of my own, which is about, you mentioned how there's like $60 billion that are being left unused. Like, what are some of the obstacles that you see when you talk to people and trying to include them? Is it that they don't know about these programs? Is it that they start an application for like SNAP, for example, and then it becomes really like difficult to continue? Is it that they get it 1 year, but then the next year, like renewing it is hard? Like, where in this process do obstacles, are they really difficult?
So probably the cheap answer is all of the above, but I think there are a few things. I think one, and this gets to the strategic equity question, it's a question of stigma. And that we talk to people every day who say that they delayed calling us to get help buying a bag of groceries because they were embarrassed, or they didn't want to take something away from someone more deserving. And if you think about it, for those, for those like me who own a home and have a mortgage, and you get a wonderful piece of welfare called the home mortgage interest deduction to buy a home, no one who has the home mortgage deduction is embarrassed about that. But yet someone who's trying to get a couple $100s to buy groceries is. So we need to address that. I think also then at the operational level, you do face situations of lots of paperwork that you have to find and figure out how do you submit it. Some cases, in-person interviews for a fairly small benefit in the age of we can do things by Zoom. So it may cost you a full day's work to go and do that. The applications can be quite hard to even understand what they're asking and what the rules are. So thinking about, the user experience and just reading what you're reading. And then the time involved in other things, never mind language issues. So it's sort of the full experience where by the end of it, you literally can have some people who are like, I'm so exhausted and frustrated, I'll figure out another way to go buy food, or I'll just go without getting the checkup.
Sarah Linardi, is there a difference in how research has affected policy conversations depending on methodology? For example, the qualitative work in this area has affected policy in a certain way before this newer quantitative work entered. How do we properly appreciate and account for that?
Yes, so I think in my mind, I think it depends on your audience from a policy point of view. And I think you need everything. I think you need the deeply quantitative, and you need the deeply not just qualitative, but sort of popular. Because in some cases, I think that the deeply quantitative can be really helpful for those who are more on the analytical side of understanding what's the benefit, no pun intended, the benefit of the benefits, and trying to make the case and the evidence and doing a lot of the design and budgeting, where really the numbers really speak. And frankly, they need that level of rigor and precision that you can bring to the table. But then if you're talking about a member of Congress, or you were talking about a policy advisor in the White House who's trying to decide should the president push for getting billions of dollars into a benefit or not, that's where the qualitative, the quantitative is the foundation, but then you kind of need the stack of the qualitative that brings in the human voice in a more prose way that can tell the story in a way. And then I think that the third part, because that can also be sort of dense, but the third part is I want to give a shout out to the oh, what's the word? Well, let me just say it's slightly pejorative, but kind of the tabloid side of things, meaning often people who make the biggest policy decisions don't read and may have like 20 seconds to get what you're talking about. And so if you're able to capture a lot of these things in an evocative way that is fast and quick, you can move a lot of things forward, but you need the rigor, I think, of the other types of research and contributions.
Into the next session from Isaac Rudy. As someone who came to this conference looking to see where my research could be helpful in addressing equity issues, you seem like the right person to ask. I write algorithms to solve optimization problem that can't be easily handled with machine learning. Do you have advice for how to find projects to help with that in that area?
Yes. So I think there are a few things. Part I'm thinking like, oh gosh, I've got about 20 things that I could rattle off right now. But I would actually say just live amongst the issue, and this is where we get to the qualitative side and the prose side. Engage the activists and the advocates. Follow just some of the popular journalism about different challenges. And that might reveal a particular issue or a type of activism that frankly is needing your quantitative muscle and skills, particularly if it's been some movements that have been going for years and years and years and just aren't quite able to make that connection. And then that's when kind of the enormous power of what you have can potentially be valuable. But let me also say a second thing just to close is, in a lot of your research and the work that you do, obviously there's a natural pride in your results and your argument and what you were trying to say. But what's also would be helpful for folks like me is also reveal your vulnerabilities. What were the limitations in your data, or what are or your perspective? What are some of the things that you might miss? Or didn't have time to kind of fit into, you just couldn't cram it into what you were trying to do. Because I think that will also not only help take up what you are presenting, but it will sharpen how this type of knowledge is ingested and the broader decision making. And that's where you can, I think, have an effect at that operational and strategic level of equity.
Inspiring. We're very much looking forward to the panel, which will be with our second keynote of the day and our discussant who's here right now, Sarah. We'll have a 5-6 minute break until the next session. And thank you all for your question. We can stay on the Zoom to prepare for the next session with the speakers and the session chair in the meantime.
Wonderful. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.